Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Safety Action webinar for September. I'm Gary Rowe, your host today, along with Andrea Rowe, who's joining us from Mildura, up in sunny Mildura. Good morning, Andrea. Well, she will join us momentarily, so she'll come back online shortly. I think she was getting out of a taxi at the time. So welcome.
Good morning, Gary and everyone.
Thanks for that, Andrea. I'm glad you could make it because I know you're active up there and busy today. So it's good that you can join us, albeit I can see you're on the move there as well. So that's good. So today,
we're glad you could join us today as well after a bike accident yesterday.
Yeah, just a little, fortunately, a little scrape by comparison, but my bike didn't fare as well as I did. So absolutely. So today, what we're going to look at is a question that we get asked every single month and inquiries on our website. What's the difference between a JSA and a SWMS? And just in case you haven't heard the term SWMS or JSA, we'll explain that momentarily. So we're going to answer that question for you today. I came across some news about some electric vehicle bans. Now, clearly, electric vehicles are the future, not only for Australia, but the world. We know that, but it may not suit everyone right now, and particularly in Australia with our long distances. But why are people banning it, but in specific areas? It's not a total ban saying no electric vehicles. I just want to show you what people are looking at, what worries them. Andrew will just talk to briefly some recent workplace fatality stats that WorkSafe have put out, I think for 2024, as I recall, Andrea. And
that's correct.
Yeah, and I came across this article that's really important to teach young children what reversing lights are on cars, and we're going to explain that momentarily. And defibrillator laws, a good friend has pointed out to us that there are some new laws have come into effect in South Australia. I haven't had time prior to this session to look up for other states, but we can do that for you and update next month. So that's what we're going to cover today. As usual, before we get into it, I'd like to ask a question. You may recall that last month we asked, when is water too hot? So that's what we asked. So that was about water and liquids last month. Today is about hard surfaces. So what temperature is too hot to touch? So there's question one. Question two, according to the safety regulations, what age of building can you assume there is no asbestos present? So you can see some signs here. Here's our asbestos register located over here. Here's danger, asbestos containing material on these premises. And we know that the older premises are clearly going to be at risk. And particularly if you see cement sheeting, corrugated roofs of that nature of old buildings, they have a high likelihood that they're going to contain some asbestos material. So today's question, at what date, where's our cut-off point where we can say, oh, from this date onwards, we're quite confident, unless somebody surreptitiously brought something into your facility, that it will not contain asbestos. So we'll come back to both those questions near the end of today's segment. So JSAs and SWMS. So first I should at least explain what JSA and SWMS mean, just in case any of the listeners are not familiar with either one or both of those terms. So JSA is essentially an abbreviation of job safety analysis. So JSA, job safety analysis. Occasionally we're now seeing JSEAs where people have said, oh, we've added environmental aspects to our job safety analysis, and that's okay. If that's what your business wants to do, you're able to do that. So what's a SWMS? So now we know that's JSA, that's what the term means. SWMS, Safe Work Method Statement, and often just abbreviated as SWMS, SWMS. So that's what we often see. A bit of background.
And Gary, first. I just wanted to share about this topic. People might find it interesting to know that we've had various articles of this same question on our website over the last about 10 years. And every single month for the last 10 years, this has been the most frequently visited page on our website by far.
Yeah, so people are interested. Question. Yeah, so people are interested in this question. And I think some people are confused Because some people will tell them, no, you're not allowed to have a JSA here. You've got to have a SWMS. Or no, you can't have a SWMS. You're meant to have a JSA. And some companies say we have SWMS and JSAs. And so they determine or make up what they've got. So let's have a look at what they actually mean. And is there any legal requirements for these? And if so, what are they? So what I can tell you, job safety analysis, JSAs, have existed far longer than SWMS. So they've been around for nearly 100 years. And I came across one of the first recorded areas. So it's written up by Heinrich in 1931, the term job safety analysis, JSA. So they've been around for nearly 100 years, JSAs. It's only since about 2007 in Victoria, it might have been a couple of years earlier, that may have come into usage. But primarily it came into common usage that SWMS was introduced in the Victorian Occupational Health and Safety Regulations for construction work. So then we started to hear SWMS a lot more, SWMS for this, SWMS for that. So is this okay or not? Let's have a quick look. So now we know JSAs have been around, let's say for 100 years. SWMS have probably been around for about 20 years. Nothing wrong with that because they're new, but they have a purpose. So let's have a look. What I can tell you is that both are like a risk assessment. Both are like a risk assessment. Both a SWMS and a JSA are very, very similar, and they are sequenced in the order of undertaking a task. Whereas if you do a risk assessment of a machine, you're not actually saying how to operate the machine. You're doing a risk assessment to make sure it's guarded and it's safe and it doesn't have exposed hot surfaces or emitting toxic fumes or adequately guarded. So you do a risk assessment of a machine, but you haven't told people how to use it. So a JSA or a SWMS is essentially sequenced in the order in which you will perform the work. The JSA more particularly is sequenced in the order of work. It is possible for a SWMS to be legal and not actually deliver that sequence for you, and I'll tell you what they have to contain shortly. So that's essentially what they are. They're a type of risk assessment. So now I've got to do a job. I'm not just looking at a machine or a workplace or chemical storage. That's a risk assessment of static areas. It's really doing a risk assessment for an active task. So there's movement, there's activity here. This is what both of these do. So the JSA can be used for any task as part of your safe systems of work. So we know under the general duty of care, we've got to have safe workplace and safe systems of work. So a JSA can certainly fulfill as part of your system in your business, say we've got JSAs for all of our tasks or for these tasks over here, and that's part of your safe system of work for those items. The easiest way I can explain it and is 4 key things that you should be looking for, and they can be columns on a page. On the left-hand side, what are the basic steps? So you break the job down into basic steps. So in safety leadership training, we show it as, let's say we're changing a flat tire on a car. So first, number 1, basic step 1, park the car in a safe place. 2, get the equipment out. 3, loosen the wheel nuts. 4, jack the vehicle up. 5, change the wheels from the flat to the inflated tire. Replace the wheel nuts. Lower the jack, fully tighten the wheel nuts. Put the gear away and drive off. So there might be 8 or 10 basic steps down the left-hand column. So that's an example. And then for each one of those basic steps in the next column, which the image here on the right-hand side of the screen now, if you said in the middle, what are the hazards at each step? So there are hazards involved in where you park the vehicle, because if you park too close to the road, people can and have been run over and killed while they've been trying to change tyres. So one of the key hazards you'll identify at step 1, basic step 1, parking the vehicle, is the key hazard is fatality risk, being struck by passing vehicles. It's got to stand out as the number 1 risk for that first basic step. So once people know that, they tend to do the job better. So they tend to say, right, now you've highlighted that to me, I'll make sure I get well clear of the road before I change the tyre. I'm not going to do it on the edge of the road. and certainly don't allow people standing on the running lane while they're trying to perform this task. And then, of course, you'll move into, do I need my hazard lights on? Do I need high-vis vest? All of these things are all valid, all form part of that. I just pointed out one key thing. And so at each step of that job, you will have hazards that you and your team can identify, and you know. This is not difficult. This is not trickery. This is the stuff we've heard of and we know for using a simple task like using an example for training as like changing a flat tire on a car, for example. So once you've got your basic steps and you now know the hazard at each step, it's really quite easy. Once you know the hazard, the control falls straight out. As soon as you say standing on the road, you could be killed, the control becomes do not stand on the road. It means park the car well clear of the road. So the controls actually fall out really easily to respond to the hazard that you've identified. And I actually say the control measures are the positive things. Do this, park well clear of the road. I like item 4. It's not essential, but I like, and the image on the right here doesn't show a fourth column. I do like a fourth column by exception. And changing a flat tire, there's 2 exceptions that we have. One of them is don't stand on the road. So it's a don't action, not a do action. And further down, when they've jacked the vehicle up, do not get under a vehicle on a jack. Right? Do not get under a vehicle on a jack. So there's 2 key precautions by exception in a fourth column if you want to. So I've just mapped out just the quick, easy sequence of constructing a JSA. We have fact sheets on this, and we have a video on this as well, on our available on our website, or call us or email us and we'll get that information to you. So SWMS. We've also got a video on preparing a SWMS, which you don't have to log in. You can just go into our website and it's available as well. So here's the difference. What a SWMS is, a Safe Work Method Statement, is prescribed by legislation, by the safety regulations in every state of Australia, that you will have a SWMS for what's called high risk construction work, which I've simply written as HRCW here. So for high risk construction work, by law, you must have a SWMS. And it is a breach of the regulations and therefore the law not to have such a thing. So now high risk construction work is primarily about construction sites, and high risk construction work, I've listed some of them here, but not all: crane operation, forklift operation, scaffolding, trenching, electrical risks if people are working near live electrics, and that could be overhead power lines or buried cables. Working at height, and that's defined as above 2 meters here, a fall risk of 2 meters or more. Working with asbestos, and there's a number of others. So I think it is 19 categories of what is called high risk construction work. And if it doesn't meet that category, you're legally not required to have a SWMS. But guess what you got to have? You still got to have a safe system of work. That's our general duty of care. So what most people do is for all construction work say, we don't care. We're going to ask for a SWMS from our contractors for all construction work. So that's what they do. And over the last 20 years, because this is so common in the construction industry, people have started to move the term SWMS into factories and into workplaces where previously they would have had a JSA. And there's nothing wrong with that. So does the requirement for a SWMS include? I've missed the question there, Andrea. It popped out of sight before I fully read it. I do apologise, whoever asked that. I'll try and answer questions as we go through. So if you want to pop that up again, did you see the question, Andrea? I'm sorry, team. I'm just following through on the presentation. Oh, here we go. Does the requirement include forklift use outside of construction? The answer is no. The legal requirement for SWMS only resides on construction sites and for what is classed as high risk construction work. So this is, as I've said, be forklift activity. However, you need a safe system of work for all forklift activity. You could choose to call it a SWMS, but you might call it a JSA. Many people call them SOPs or SWPs, so standard operating procedure, safe work procedure. The courts do not care what you call the document. But if you call it a SWMS, I'm going to show you, here's what it must contain. This is legally what a SWMS is. Sorry, Andrea.
That was a really good question, because I actually come across this a lot where it's often confused because the high-risk construction work is a list of activities. And so it's important to remember that it must be construction work as well as one of those or more of those particular high-risk construction activities.
Indeed, but there's no harm in having a SWMS for all forklift activity if that's what you choose to do in your business. This is part of what this little session today is trying to explain. The courts really don't care what label you put on the document. So from the yard entering confined space, was it? What a SWMS must contain is the title. That is the name of the high-risk construction work. So it'll say we're doing trenching, right? Because that's one of the 19 designated high-risk construction works. This is on a construction site, and it's one of the high-risk tasks on a construction site. You identify the hazards associated with that trenching, and you must describe the controls. Guess what? This is almost identical to the process we use for JSA. And so it doesn't say you have to say the basic steps here, but it helps you to construct a SWMS if you use the same mechanism I showed you to produce a JSA, that on the left-hand column, you break the job down and say, what are the basic steps? And hopefully not more than 10. So let's say there are 4, 6, or 10 steps, and you just jot them down. And then for each one of those steps, you list what are the identified hazards at each stage as you do those things. Or if you fail to do those things, it could happen later. And then in the next column, the third column over to the right, you then write how you're going to control it. And that was the same as what we did for JSA, except this is now prescribed in this order. And just so I also like the added bit, they need to be comprehensible to the users. And a lot of people have missed this. What that means, to be simple, our rule of thumb in safety action is we don't tolerate a SWMS more than 1 page long. We'll allow 2 pages, which is 1 page double-sided. And if your SWMS is longer than that, we recommend you break the job down into different jobs. So instead of operating the machine, you might say setting up and starting the machine. That's 1 SWMS. Running the machine could be another SWMS. Clearing a blockage could be another. Shutting down the machine or process could be another. Keep your SWMS ideally to 1 page double-sided. It's not the law, it's just good practice. And I do apologise to the team. I'm really slow presenting and picking up all your comments. Hopefully Andrew or Sarah can, and particularly as we get to the end, I'll do my best to pick these up and answer them for you. So now you know what a JSA is and a SWMS. There's a lot of overlap. They're very, very similar. And you can use the JSA process to achieve the same result, but they're SWMS only legally required for high-risk construction work. So at a construction area, so it could be not a construction site, it might be a factory, but today we're doing some construction work, lining a wall or part of the roof. That becomes construction at a normal business. And so we can have those things. So what are the duties for SWMS? What I can share with you, the employer has the duty to ensure the SWMS is complied with. The employer of the worker who's doing the job, not you, the owner of the site, but if you've got a contractor firm on site, it's the contractor firm has the legal responsibility that SWMS is complied with. You may have other contractor rules. That'll be a session for another day. So we're not going into that today. I just want you to understand the legal requirement lies with whoever the employer of that worker is. Whoever that worker is, they've got an employer. It is that employer that has prime responsibility to ensure they're working safely. And road maintenance is definitely categorised as construction. I just saw that question, because one of the 19 categories is exposure adjacent to road or railway. So if anyone's working adjacent to a roadway or railway, that is a designated not only construction work, it is high risk construction work. There we go.
Although, Gary, I would say it will depend what that sort of maintenance is, because remember, on a general workplace, servicing and maintenance is not construction. So we had another question about, for example, entering a confined space. So, you know, cleaning a sewer pit, for example, is not construction. So that confined space activity, it's not high risk construction work. But of course, you still need the safety controls, including a confined space permit and safe, safety controls and rescue personnel, etc.
Correct. There are separate regulations for confined spaces if that's all it is, and it's not around construction. So the employer is responsible to ensure the SWMS are complied with. If conditions change or workers cannot follow that SWMS, there's a legal obligation that work must stop, and that'll be imposed on the employer of those people. And the employer will tell the workers, if you can't follow these SWMS, you must stop work and escalate it. So these are the language we've got to get clear through to people. The SWMS has only got to be kept for the duration of the task. There's no reason why you throw it out, because it's great to have them to use it over and over for similar tasks in the future, but there's no legal requirement. So if WorkSafe come in a week later, the job's done, gone, there was no incident, so where's the SWMS for that last week? You may not have it. You don't have to. The SWMS is to be given to the principal contractor, listed here as abbreviated as PC. So often people know PC, principal contractor, for larger construction works. Outside of Victoria, that's a legal requirement. It might be just company requirement that you may impose if it's your company and your business that's running, engage that contractor for that purpose. But outside in Victoria, that's not a legal requirement per se, but it is interstate. So what's not required on a SWMS? I'm mindful of time to get through today in a half hour, because this has been an interesting discussion and lots of good questions today. So well done, team. What's not required, what we often see, is a requirement for all workers must sign off on the SWMS. There's nothing wrong with that as a company rule, but it's not a legal requirement. So your SWMS does not become invalid or improper because you haven't got that. But it's actually a helpful way to show that all the workers doing the job were aware of the SWMS and had seen it. So it's nice, and you might say, well, just because they signed off, did they really understand it? And the answer is possibly no. That's why you've also got to have training and supervision. But so sign off, if you've got as company rule, there's nothing wrong with that, but that is not a legal requirement. Nor is it, we see wasteful use of a risk matrix and risk ratings at every step of the job. It is the most stupid, wasteful thing that you or anyone else can be doing in the name of safety. Please stop it. When you do a job, it's either a high-risk job or a low-risk job. You don't actually pick out every little bit of it and then have to apply a risk matrix to it and complicating your SWMS. Remember, a legal requirement for a SWMS has got to be comprehensible to the user, therefore simple. And I think a lot of people have lost this when we see 10-page, 12-page, 20-page SWMS, and it's full of junk that the actual workers doing the job do not want, do not need, doesn't help them do the job at all. What you've actually hidden is the key things. What was it I told you earlier? You have to identify the hazards at each step. And if you hide that in a 12-page document and spread it all around, people cannot find it, and it's actually dangerous. So please stop using a risk matrix and risk ratings in a SWMS. That is not necessary. The risk assessment you do on how to do the job safely is sufficient, because you don't change the tyre if you don't have a jack, or if the jack's broken, or if it's faulty. So that's part of pre-use visual inspection. I pull it out, I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to change the tyre if I can't get off the road. It is too dangerous. You don't need a risk matrix. You've actually got clear standards that we've actually applied as part of producing that SWMS and identifying what the hazards are, and then the controls, how we're going to control them. You'll have consultation, of course. You'll have training records, but they do not have to be on the SWMS or connected to the SWMS. You may choose to for company convenience, but WorkSafe and no other authority is going to come in and say your SWMS is defective. So I'll continue to go through. So there we go. Sorry, is there any other questions on that before we leave SWMS and JSAs, Andrea, that you wanted to touch on?
Yes, so there's a question there about an employer's responsibility, I believe, for subcontractors. So Carol says, does that mean the PCBU or employer isn't responsible for the SWMS being complied to if a construction company is coming to your workplace? So we're talking about if you engage a contractor.
The law makes it quite clear the employer has prime responsibility. So the employer of that worker, which could be the employer of the subby, and they'll be the first ones that will be interviewed and held liable for any deficiency or particularly if an accident occurs. However, we have a duty of care, not the same, if we're engaging contractors onto our site. And as you know, Andrea, we understand pre-qualification, hiring competent firms, doing safety inductions for all workers so they know our site and our site rules. So as long as the company has got a good contractor system and you apply that, how people perform the job on the given day or given minute is not up to the owner of the site. It is actually the contractor, and it's quite clear here in the regulations.
And I guess the important thing I consider when I'm looking at SWMS with contractors before the works is remembering that as the employer, if you're bringing a contractor to your workplace, the workplace is the aspect that you have control of. So that's where it's really important to give those contractors an induction and to tell them about the relevant hazards at your workplace that might impact their work. So, for example, if they're going onto the roof, it's really important that you tell them about live edges, hazards such as skylights and everything like that up there so that they can, follow their SWMS and perform the work safely.
Correct. So well explained, Andrea. So essentially the employer or owner occupier of the site has a responsibility as part of that safety induction for all workers to let them know if things are hazards that might be unusual to your site or unusual to them that they may not see. For example, they may be doing gardening but unaware that there's an electrical power line underground. That would be part of the safety induction. Be aware we have underground power lines here. You must get a permit to do excavation work. Might be, for an example. Or as Andrea said, maybe working on a roof. It could be, again, close access to a overhead power line. We need to let them know that, although that should be obvious when they get up there. But that's the purpose of a site safety induction. It's got to be site specific. It can't be just we're a great company, we look after our people. That is all useless stuff that's put into inductions. When you do a safety induction, particularly for contractors, it's not about we're wonderful people and we care about you. What you tell them, your duty, your legal duty, what are the site specific hazards here on our site? And also, what are our site-specific rules? What do you do or not do when you come onto our premises? Do you need a permit to do an excavation or not? Do you need a permit to go on a roof? But people don't know because every company has different rules. So that's the purpose of that site safety induction. So hopefully that helps there. We might do more on contractor management in a future session, Andrea, because I think that clearly is a number of good questions.
To those in Melbourne, we actually have an event coming up related to contractor management.
Oh, that's it. With your safety networking session that you're leading, Andrew. We'll come to that momentarily. Yep, thanks for reminding me. So I'm mindful of time and we're coming up to our half hour. So just quickly, I came across a couple of articles on electric vehicle bans. I'm not anti-electric vehicle. I don't have one at the moment, but I fully expect that sometime in the future make eminent sense, particularly as our town driving car. It'd be fine for me to go to work in. So I'm not against electric cars. A US shipping company recently banned, as taking effect immediately, any electric cars or plug-in electric cars on their ships. So apparently this followed several fires at sea, and I think one of them sunk one of the shipping company's vessels and the other totally destroyed it. So you can understand they're concerned about it, and obviously it was alleged or they believed the fire was either started or contributed significantly by the electric vehicles, the batteries from the electric vehicles. Very difficult to put the fire out. So that's what one shipping company's done. Clearly, we're still getting lots of electric cars in Australia, so other shipping companies are still shipping the vehicles we need in Australia, electric vehicles. But some individual companies are doing a risk assessment and saying, we don't want our ships destroyed. It's too big a risk, and we're not going to do that. At some time in the future, we're going to have to work out how we can do this safely or better and I think that idea will disappear. The other one I came across, and I don't think is unreasonable, is that more than one Australian owners corporation have either banned or have announced they're planning to ban electric vehicle charging from their underground car parks. And once again, I don't think this is unreasonable. They're not saying they're banning electric vehicles. They're not saying they're banning them from their site. What they said is, in their underground car parks, once the fire starts there, the fire brigade, I think you've told me earlier, Andrea, the fire trucks can't get into the underground car parks. They can only go in with handheld fire extinguishers. Most of the underground car parks, if they do have fire sprinklers, were never designed to cope with an electric vehicle fire, which is very different. And the demand for the water supply is very different to, if you like, a diesel car or petrol car fire, because they catch on fire as well. So it's very different. So I think until car parks are designed with appropriate fire protection, some owners corporations are saying we think the risk underground is too severe. So it's okay to charge them.
So, the cars inside buildings is a significantly different hazard to car parks in an outdoor car park. And this is because, well, partly the smoke from these lithium-ion battery fires is extremely toxic, but in an indoor environment, those fumes can accumulate, and then you also have the risk of the vapor cloud explosion, which doesn't really exist in the outdoors. And so, of course, then you've got the risk of, potentially burning a whole building down, because, as you said, the fire installations are not generally, designed for this.
Yeah, some very good points there, Andrea. Maybe we need another more detailed article on this, given what you've just told me, because I know you've done a lot of work on this with Toyota and other companies that you're working with. I'd like to look at this further, and I think it'll be of interest to everyone. And it's not about being alarmistic. It's understanding risk, how we manage it, and we know in the future the electric car designs, we know are going to change yet again. The technology will change, the safety systems will change, the precautions will change. But at the moment, we need to understand what those risks are. So thanks for that, Andrea. That's good.
I would just remind people, if they're thinking about this in their workplaces, the cars are in fact very safe. The likelihood of a vehicle fire is very unlikely. However, if you have workers riding those electric scooters and bikes to work, or potentially charging them at your workplace, I would be looking at those first.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Andrea. Good. Some very good points. The workplace fatalities, I don't think, in the interest of time, we'll just point out that I've only put one graph in here, and there's not much information in our newsletter.
Yeah,
but you were just,
so
yeah, go ahead, Andrea.
Oh, yes. So, Gary, you can go to the website, and we've just shown one of the graphs. Yes. But if you go to the website, there's a WorkSafe Victoria website. There's various filters you can put, and you can see more information about the fatalities data. And no surprise, which is similar to the Australian data, the very majority of the fatalities in the last 10 years in Victoria were males. So out of the nearly 600 fatalities, 48 were female. So keep that in mind. And also the older workers were the main group in the fatalities. So over half of the workers that had been killed at work were over the age of 55. So that's of interest to know. And the majority of the fatalities were from physical injuries. So, serious workplace accidents.
We're talking forklifts, cranes, pits, confined spaces, machinery, I'm guessing.
Indeed. But it's also, I guess, 74 of the nearly 600 fatalities were lung diseases. So that's a key issue as well.
Okay. Somebody just asked, what about electric forklifts charging at the workplace? So I've mentioned the electric vehicle ban. Andrea, from your experience, are they different type of batteries historically in forklifts? Is that the old lead acid type, not the...
No, you can have electric ones now. So they are typically a lithium-ion battery. And so, the hazard does exist. But keep in mind, again, typically the forklifts and vehicles are designed and, engineered to a very high standard. And, so unless they are damaged, the likelihood of a fire is very unlikely. If there was a fire, the same hazards exist in terms of the potential for vapor cloud explosion. So if you have an undercover outdoor charging area, that would certainly be ideal. But a lot of the time they are in fact charged indoors as well.
Yeah, but their risk assessment should have a look at where it's located and how they'll actually put the fire out or control it. So thanks for that, Andrea.
Yeah, so the main thing is to make sure that the workplace still has clear evacuation routes, because I wouldn't be staying to fight the fire. It's very toxic smoke. So your priority is to get people out of the building.
And therefore, you don't want the charging too close to emergency exits, I imagine.
Exactly right.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks. We've gone past our time, everyone. We're okay, but we're mindful of you. So we'll just try and quickly finish off for you with this morning. White reversing lights, I think it was on one of the internet motoring sites where I came across, somebody suggested we should educate all of our young children. What are reversing lights? What do they look like? And what does it mean? And I can tell you, I go out on the bicycle often with a number of my grandchildren, and they whiz past the back of cars, and I've seen that they've got the white reversing light on. Thankfully, the driver's holding the brake and waiting to go. They've seen them and gone past. So I've needed to actually explain to my grandkids what this actually means. They could actually lift their foot off the brake and come out and run over the top of you. So I just thought that was a nice little tip. It's a good tip for young children, particularly that are just getting to the point of going out around the suburb, possibly down to car parks and shopping centres, that they should understand what that means. And that is extreme caution. The driver has selected reverse gear, and if they lift their foot off the brake, it is going to come out. So so thanks for that. I understand some people have got to go, and the new defibrillator laws in South Australia, I think we'll hold this one over, Andrea, and we'll check other states so we can give you an Australia-wide, but certainly South Australia has announced from the 1st of January next year, most public buildings and facilities, and it's aimed at them, but some of our clients have asked, will it affect our commercial operations? It might, but it's primarily aimed at aged care, libraries, schools, casinos, theatres, churches, aquatic centres and sports and recreation type facilities. And basically they're going to legally be required to have at least one, automatic, but what's the E for defibrillator, Andrea? Automatic.
I'm not sure. Someone might remind us. I've forgotten. It's on the top, Gary. Automated external defibrillator.
I do apologise, everyone. Yeah, just a brain fade this morning. I might need my AED to kickstart me here. So we'll come back to that and we'll give you an Australia-wide roundup. So Andrea, just quickly on our safety network event coming up next month on the 9th of October.
Yes, so everyone, if you're based in Melbourne, feel free to come along. We are hosting a network event, so just an opportunity for those of you to come along and talk with people from other businesses and learn a bit more about contractor safety, and chat about what your business is doing and learn what others are doing in this space that's quite, there's every businesses are doing things all very differently. But it's certainly a priority that we need to get right.
Thanks, Andrea. That's great. So let's finish off with our questions of the day. What temperature is too hot to touch? The first thing, we've got a fact sheet on this, so if anyone wants more detail, but the first thing is it's very different, the temperature of stainless steel to the temperature of a brick, ceramic material, to the temperature of timber, to the temperature of all different glass. So it varies a bit, but we've rounded it off, and Dr. Webber of our team, he suggests you simply shield hot surfaces greater than 60 degrees C, even though whether it's a first degree burn, second or third, or the type of material, we've rounded all of this back so you can have a clear yes, no answer. Hotter than that, let's shield it. You go into some factories and there's hot pipes, and you walk past, you might burn your arm. So you'd obviously just have a shield on that. So that's what we'd recommend. The other one was asbestos. At what age? And I was speaking to Andrea before the session started, and she was a bit surprised with the answer. So what I can tell you, the national ban on the import and use of any asbestos material or products only commenced on the 31st of December 2003. We've had bans, partial bans, for 20 years prior. First, they thought blue asbestos was the only dangerous one, so we'll ban that. Then they thought brown asbestos, amosite, oh, we better ban that. Then they thought chrysotile safe, white asbestos. Eventually, the research showed that all forms of asbestos can cause cancer and death. Obviously, the blue asbestos more dangerous with lower dose again, typically. However, they're all being treated the same as a carcinogenic substance. Therefore, we can reasonably assume new facilities from 2004 onwards will not have asbestos into the structure, building, or the plant room or equipment in it. So unless someone surreptitiously now found some asbestos and illegally brought it into your workplace, you can assume from 2004 it won't. So we've gone a few minutes over today. We've had some great questions from everyone. So thank you, Andrea, because I know you're on the move and busy up in Mildura today. Thanks, Sarah. You answered a couple of the questions there, and we've got fact sheets. You can contact us. Sarah will be the prime one if you call in any time for any of that more information on those topics. And what we'll do is, I think, follow up on the electric charging for both forklifts and others, Andrea. And I think we said we'll do Australia-wide wrap up on the defibrillators as well. So thanks again, everyone. Bye.